in your backdrop, you have this picture, and I see these two people hugging, and I can only imagine that it's a mom or it's an aunt or someone that just lost someone. And, the thought of going to pray and take advantage of a religious moment and be together, and then an hour later, you've lost someone as a result of something that's totally controllable, is sad.
LawFlip, objection, Your Honor. Turn the game upside down. LawFlip, objection, Your Honor. Turn the game upside down.
Welcome to LawFlip. It's an unfiltered conversation about law, life, politics, tech, and everything in between. I'm Benjy Smith. This is Benowitz, and we have a very special guest in the building, Siamak Vaziri.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me, guys.
Pleasure to have you here. Today, we're going to talk about how Siamak Vaziri was part of the Hundreds, the streetwear brand, left the Hundreds, and how he still maintained a friendship with the Hundreds. This is a sick episode, not in the way that you're getting sick. It's just sick and dope and hot. You have to watch it. The presenting sponsor is Filevine. Filevine is a cloud-based case management software designed for legal professionals with customizations and efficiency driving tools for your practice. Allow technology to give you the time you need to fight for your clients and run your business. Friends of LawFlip get a 10% discount off license fees. Give us the credit for referring you by emailing engage@filevine.com. Get Filevine, it's very hot. So what we have on the screen is a picture of Siamak Vaziri. We have my brother, Jeremy Smith. We have Ben Shanasfar, also known as Ben Hundreds, which we'll get to the story about Ben Hundreds in a little bit. And then we have Josh Sternberg. So we grew up in a circle in the Valley. We've all been pretty close for, I think, like 30 years. So you grew up in the Valley.
I did.
Are you okay admitting that?
I'm okay admitting it. My wife, on the other hand, she tends to deny that fact. So
okay, so when it comes up, it's like, yeah, no, he's from Los Angeles.
From LA, yeah.
Sure. And you went to Loyola Law School, and then right out of Loyola, I think you worked for a defense firm for a couple of years?
Not even a couple of years, for 9 months.
For 9 months.
Yeah.
And then you decided to make the bold move to start your firm, and you've grown it to a firm of, I think, 12 attorneys and over 50 employees, correct?
Yep.
What do you think the biggest factor was in getting you from a solo practitioner to 12 attorneys, 55 employees?
I think when I first started, I opened the firm on a certain set of principles, and I've continued to, continue those principles and work hard at them. And I think the biggest is service. And I think as long as you continue to provide good service for your clients, your clientele will grow. So I think, I've approached my practice the same way, which is trying to provide great service across the board. And as long as we continue to do that, then our clientele will continue to grow, and we get referrals from our clients, which is, the greatest compliment I could receive, that I've done a good job and they want to refer their sister, their mom, their aunt, their friend.
When I think about you, a big part of what I think about is sports. So we grew up playing sports together, basketball at the gym. I kind of thought about, how would you liken your running of your firm to running a sports team? Like, what team would your firm be? What position would you be playing?
I'd say, and I would hope, we are the San Antonio Spurs, where we're consistently relevant and we're consistently good. We've had years of winning championships, and we've had years of just being a really good, basketball team. And I think in the practice of law, you want to stay consistent with what you're doing, and you want to continue to run on the same principles that you founded your firm on. As far as a player, I would probably now, at this point in my career, say I'm more of a GM or a VP of basketball operations than I am as a player.
So I was going to say, I thought it was going to be really hard for you to point to a player. I thought you were going to say, absolutely, I have to be an owner of the team.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to be an owner, obviously. But yeah, someone probably behind the scenes, a little bit more involved in the decision-making, which puts a product out there.
Yeah. And to that point, how would you describe your leadership skills in your firm? What would you say the balance is between being a lawyer and a business person, and how you operate?
So, for me, it's been a transition. And when I opened the firm, I was the sole member, I was the sole employee, I was everything in that firm. So I was responsible from the business standpoint as well as the legal standpoint. But as the firm has continued to grow, my actual practice of law has become less and less. I'm more involved in the management of the firm. I'm involved in marketing and advertising. I work with our HR director on hiring. So, I'm probably not involved in day-to-day. I don't take depositions. I'm not involved in trial work anymore. I do occasionally get involved in settlement discussions and negotiations, but I'm really behind the scenes, and I'm trying to create a platform and, a place where people can come and excel. And, we do good work, and we represent our clients, and, we take care of them.
A lot of people that start operating the way that you're describing, they want to always say, I'm still operating as a lawyer full time, even though a lot of their time is spent running it as a business. How did you become comfortable outwardly stating that?
I think at a point you have to look at yourself and see, where's my value, and in what areas can I add value to what I'm doing? And I realized that I'm probably more valuable to my firm from a business and marketing standpoint than I am as an attorney. Once I figured out what I want to do, it's just about putting those pieces in place. And, believe it or not, it's really challenging.
Sure. So, okay. So, my dad, Mark Smith.
I do know Mark.
My father has a lot of sayings, but one of them is he always stressed to us, Jeremy, Sammy, and myself, like, go 4 for 4. And so his whole point was liken this to a baseball game, right? So you've gotten 2 hits in the game, and rather than resting on your 2 hits, go 4 for 4. Keep going, right? And so when I think about you, I see somebody who's achieved incredible success, and you potentially could maybe even retire at a young age. What keeps you motivated to go 4 for 4 and keep pushing?
I mean, I'm probably in a very unique position that I absolutely love what I do. I've never looked at going to work as, oh my gosh, I got to wake up and go to work. For me, I wake up and I'm like, I can't wait to get in the office and, do the things that I need to do. So when you find passion in what you do, you just continue doing it. I mean, some people are great artists and they have great passion in playing the guitar. And, if they're an awesome guitarist and they make millions of dollars being a guitarist,
sure,
and all for them. I find passion in what I do. So, I'm motivated just by, being passionate about what I do. When you have that attitude and you have that energy, people feel it and they embrace it and they run with it, and that positive energy grows. And, on that note, that negative energy grows, and you come to work and you're miserable and you have you shrug your shoulders and you're down and you don't leave your office and your communication skills aren't good. People feed off of that. And, as an owner and as a leader, you want to create, a positive energy for your firm.
100%.
And that positive energy then goes towards the work product, how we deal with our clients, how we deal with opposing counsel, how we draft motions. I mean, that energy flows through everything.
And it actually reminds me of something that I want to segue into, which is Bobby Hundreds. So the Hundreds is for those of you who don't know, it's a streetwear lifestyle editorial brand, but I don't think many people out there know this until Bobby Hundreds, I think it's a memoir that he put out, was called This Is Not a T-Shirt. That's the name of the book. And so he actually allocates an entire chapter to you, Siamak Vaziri. And we're all wondering, why would Siamak Vaziri be in a book written by a guy who founded a streetwear company? Let's take it back. So Bobby Kim, also known as Bobby Hundreds, went to Loyola Law School. And same time as you and Ben Shnasfar, also known now as Ben Hundreds. At the time, there were 3 owners of the Hundreds. It was Ben Hundreds, Bobby Hundreds, and Mac Hundreds. At some point in time, you were co-owner of the Hundreds back in law school, and at some point it became a divorce and you had to walk away from the Hundreds. And we'll get into more of the details. But part of the breakup was a part of this book where Bobby Hundreds describes that you, Siamak, and he calls you the negotiator, got out negotiated. So there's one line in this chapter that I think you're going to push back on. So Bobby wrote that the negotiator, being you, got out negotiated. Now, being an incredibly proud negotiator, like I pride myself in being the best of the best. Yeah. Like that I live for it. People run away from negotiations. I offer to negotiate things that aren't even my cases. I just give me the thing to negotiate, right? For me to hear that, I know that would drive me crazy. Was that how you saw it? And what's your take on that portion of the chapter?
So I read it and I think it's pretty accurate, to be quite honest with you. And I have 2 points before I get into that. One, with regards to negotiations, I don't look at it as always a win or loss situation. Like there's not a winner and there's not a loser. Sometimes negotiations are, an understanding and coming to terms, and both sides walk away from a situation equally happy or equally unhappy. So when I left the hundreds, it wasn't a situation where I was like, oh man, I got burnt. It was a point in my life where I was looking to do new things, and it was a point in time where they were looking to take the brand in another direction. So that's as far as the negotiations, which I'll circle back. But as far as Bobby Hundreds, I got to be honest with you. He's probably one of the most incredible people I've ever met. I really cannot say enough about him. I mean, from a talent standpoint, from a human standpoint, from a friend standpoint, I absolutely love the guy. I adore him. He is a very dear friend. He will always be a dear friend. I love his wife. I love his 2 boys. I love everything about him. So, fast forward.
He's just an incredible
fast forward
inspiration.
15 years later, I'm his biggest fan. So that's as far as, Bobby Hundreds. But, with regards to the negotiations, to kind of give you some context how that came about, we were in first year of law school, which was like super competitive. And, in law school, it's like you're either in the top 10% or you're not. And me, Ben, and Bobby were quickly not in the top 10%. And we probably were closer to the bottom 10%. So once we figured out like, hey, we're not going to be in the top 10%, we kind of approached law school with an attitude of like, look, we're here. Let's take what we can. Let's enjoy it. And, we're young. We're 24, 25 years old. Let's have a good time. And you had this ultra competitive environment where people were just like, really cutthroat towards each other, and like nobody would share anything. And like the concept of sharing your notes was like, no way, you'll never do that. But, me, Ben, and Bobby came in there, and Ben and I had been best friends for, 20 years prior to that. Yeah. And so, we were attached at the hips, and we met Bobby. And we looked at Bobby and we were like, oh, this guy's pretty cool. He wears cool sneakers. He dresses cool. He's got a fun kind of cool thing about him. So we clicked instantly, me, Ben, and Bobby. And he almost became a part of our crew with your brother and Stu Purdy and a couple of other guys there also. And, while we developed that friendship, we saw that we had a lot of similar interests, and a lot of it stemmed from our passion of sneakers. We were all sneakerheads. I was really into Jordans. They were into SB, so on and so forth. And, that passion, or that similar passion that we had, we started talking about different things that we could do. And, Bobby was just super talented. And as an artist, he's like, I kind of want to create a streetwear brand. And I was like, well, cool, man. I'll sell ice to an Eskimo. Like you put it out there and I'll sell it. And Ben's like, I could handle operations. So, we started this idea, and, Bobby came up with some designs, and then Ben was responsible for trying to figure out how we could get these designs on a t-shirt. And it was my job to go sell it. So, we each had our responsibilities, and it was fun. It was really enjoyable. We made no money, the first year or two, but I mean, just the fun and the passion and the love that we had was just so incredible. And we put the brand out there, and I got us into some really cool boutiques. I got us into Fred Siegel, and wow. I walked in there, and on a total gimmick really, and I convinced the guy that we're a huge brand, we're everywhere except here. And he had, the FOMO. He had the fear of missing out on something. Yeah. So he's like, dude, I need some. And I was like, well, I can only give you very little, because we only had very little, right? And he's like, no, I need more. So, I mean, I created a demand, and it was awesome. And then slowly the brand started to pick up, and I saw Bobby and Ben got really passionate about this. And it wasn't like, hey, this is fun, or this is like a cool way to make some extra money. It was like, this is their calling in life. And in all fairness, I didn't share that same passion. I didn't have it. I like the business side of it, but I never envisioned, selling t-shirts to feed my kids, and I wasn't married and I didn't have kids at the time, but I didn't see this as something that I could do and would be sustainable for my future. So by my, not having the same passion that I did, I think I kind of, went a little to the side, and they continued to get stronger together. And I think they made a decision that this is what they want to do. And I was like, look, I want to finish law school. I'm going to go get a job, and I'm going to be an entrepreneur and open up my own firm.
Yeah, and they kind of Bobby kind of jokes that it had a happy ending. You guys all remained friends, and that what you make crushes in comparison to what they make. But
yeah, I think you made some sort of reference like their lemonade stand, which, you know, obviously is an exaggeration.
Of course.
They are doing awesome.
Yeah.
I couldn't be happier for them. And but you know, like all breakups, there was a period where it was weird, it was awkward, but shortly thereafter, you know, it kind of got past us. There was a moment where the brand was absolutely killing it, and they got like a crazy valuation, and I started second guessing myself. Yeah. I was like, you know, man, what did I do? You know, but you know, as they continue to have success, I was fortunate enough to have success, and you know, Ben is still one of my best friends. I see Bobby, you know, not as often as I like, but you know, it's all good.
And I just want to say about Bobby is, I think for a lot of us, you know, none of us were really in fashion. Most of us have been in the law, but he's just been like this crazy inspirational character. For me, I remember seeing his blog in the early days and saying like, this is the most unbelievable thing. I couldn't stop. I would like click it over and over and over again. But the craziest part about the blog was he wasn't talking about the hundreds. Like the hundreds, I was like, why aren't you talking about the hundreds? He's like talking about an artist. He's talking about culture. He's talking about art. He's talking about this chef. He's talking about the dopest t-shirt in the world right now is at the streetwear company across the street. And I'm like, I don't get it. And then sure enough, we find out he's got like 1 million unique like readers a month. And it's like, okay, now I get it. And it's like, the guy is such a visionary and that's part of what inspired me to do this podcast, which is like, I just think it's cool to shine light on other people. Absolutely. And not talk about yourself all the time. And I just have fun doing it too. I love taking depositions. So a lot of times in a deposition, I'll just literally ask questions that have nothing to do with the case. I'm just curious. And so I think he's so curious about life and everything. And so I just think it's cool that you're a part of that story and that we've all been inspired by it. It's been close to us, but like, even, you know, we walk around the streets, you see hundreds everywhere. And so it's just, it's cool that you're a part of it. But then of course I love at the end of the chapter, he says how it's sort of everything's cool now. You guys are all friends. And
it's so much more than just cool now. Like, I mean, when I see kids wearing their brand, you know, every time I get a little, you know, I get a feeling inside that I was part of that I started that I created that. But obviously at this point, my happiness is more directed towards them about what an incredible brand they've built, and, you know, how they're, I think the level of respect that I have so much is that they approach what they do the same way that I do, which is love and passion. I think Bobby and Ben go to work and they never think about it as work. They're like, what's next? You know, and they've grown so much from just making clothes. I mean, they're involved in food fairs. They're involved in so many different things that it's really incredible. So I'm super proud of both of them. I'd love to renegotiate my buyout, but you know, we could maybe do that at another time. To the point where you said that you in the middle of those negotiations, like I think it was in somebody's apartment, Bobby wrote that you said, hey, like, I want to be a lawyer. And that reminded me that I think you're a first generation Iranian. And my thought was, your parents probably told you got to be an engineer, a lawyer, or a doctor. Which one was it? Well, it's always doctor. So, you know, on that note, I got a funny joke, and we have the first Persian president of the United States, and you know, we're at the inauguration, and his mom is sitting there, and there's a lady sitting next to his mom, and the lady goes to the mom and says, "Wow, you must be so proud, you know, your son, first Persian president," and she goes, "I am. His brother's a doctor." Just to give you context. It's, you know, sure engineer, sure lawyer, but, you know, being Iranian, it's really about being a doctor.
So when you were having that discussion, does that come in, like, is that part of your thinking? Like, hey, I have to be a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer?
You know, yes and no. I knew that I wanted to continue my education after UCLA, where I went for undergrad. I knew I wanted to, you know, obviously have some more education, but I think I knew at an early age that I wanted to be a lawyer.
Sure.
And there was nothing else that interested me, you know.
Makes sense. Okay. So you better stay for the topics. Are you with us?
Sure.
So I want to move to an interesting topic. It's the away travel bag corporate culture. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with away travel bags, but you hear these commercials.
Now there's something new. The perfect suitcase. Meet away. Thoughtfully designed luggage.
Company sounds so dreamy, but this article does its best to describe the vibe of this company as not so dreamy. So the company had this policy where the employees were not allowed to email each other. They had to use Slack for all written communication. And so Slack is, if you guys remember, and maybe the old fogies don't remember this, but there was AIM, where we used to like instant messenger chat people. That's what Slack is for the workplace. And what would happen is the away company would use these Slack channels for them to like basically berate employees in public channels where everybody would see it. So they use it as a sword to like monitor employee communications and berate employees in online forums in front of coworkers. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen.
It is a lawsuit waiting to happen. So there's a lot to unwrap here, but the bigger point that I want to get to is how do we balance being incredibly ambitious with providing a nice working environment for our employees, Mac?
One of the keys to running any sort of successful business is investing in your people. And I think you invest in good quality people, you compensate your people well, and you really maximize productivity and efficiency at that point.
Sure.
I think there's nothing worse than someone coming to work unhappy. Like they're just not going to work. And the product that you're going to get out of them is going to be subpar.
Sure. And I couldn't agree more. And look, we're biased. We 100% represent employees to the extent that you can provide an objective take, Lou.
I mean, I see it as a balance. So one of the things doing employment law I see is companies that have a lot of turnover tend to have problems. So I get the desire of management to maximize efficiency and productivity at every turn. But sometimes it's worth just sacrificing that a bit so you have happy workers who stay and you know what you're getting and you have stability.
Well, I think those kind of go hand in hand, right? Because I think when you have a happy employee, and you have a person that's coming to a workplace and they're enjoying their environment, you're going to get productivity and you're going to get efficiency. So I don't think it's one or the other. I think they actually go hand in hand.
Completely hand in hand. So yeah. the only companies that, I mean, you hear like with the exception of like maybe Amazon, most companies that have sad employees have sad businesses.
Sure.
And so even if you were thinking about it strictly from a monetary perspective, which I'm not saying you should, but even if you were thinking about it from a strictly monetary perspective, it's a no-brainer. Treat your employees well. But then, of course, there's the value ethical thing, which is why do you want to be a shitty person and to be a bad employer? So I agree. We kind of have a consensus take on this. Now we're getting into a very hot topic, and I think this illustrates a lot of what happens in the law. This is a topic that we're going to call a bowl of dicks settlement negotiation. So we're sticking with today's theme of workplace drama. So case is an insurance dispute about $200,000. Plaintiff's counsel, this guy named Christopher Hook, is up against a large defense firm, Shepherd Mullen, and a well-heeled insurance company, Allstate. Frustrated over how negotiations in this dispute are going, while demanding increasingly more money, plaintiff's counsel sends what defense counsel describes as dozens of abusive, threatening emails. These include, "F you crooks, eat a bowl of dicks. I'm going to let the long dick of the law f Allstate for all of us." It then escalates into threats against defense counsel's family. Well, karma's a bitch. You're going to learn that in spades. So when I came out of law school, I thought that I had to be a Mr. Big Bad Tough Guy because that's just what I thought the game was. I would get on calls and I would get heated and everything was so dramatic and I took everything so personal. And what I found was it wasn't effective.
Especially considering that in this particular case, once defense counsel told the court about it, the court threatened to dismiss the lawsuit, threatened to sanction plaintiff's counsel, threatened to disqualify counsel, and just tons of horrible things for both the client and the lawyer.
Yeah, and so
I feel absolutely terrible for the client. I mean, talk about a malpractice suit that's going to follow.
Yeah, 100%. So at some point I realized this doesn't work. It doesn't work for the client. It doesn't work for me as a person. I remember vividly that a few years ago, I was involved in really heavy duty litigation with probably the biggest, best lawyers in LA, if not the state, if not the country. We had depositions every day for, I think, like 15 days straight. And I got lucky enough to be just one of the lawyers in the mix. There was probably like 7 of us. And I was not sure, are there going to be some jerks in the room that fight every single time when a question's asked, objections? These were the best of the best. And what I noticed was no bickering whatsoever. It was the most cordial, civil environment I've ever seen. And I already had felt that way, that like this was the way to operate as a lawyer. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, that feels so good to know that like the best of the best don't operate like this. And I just use that as a guiding principle. And I think I saw Rosh Yamapur, he was on a podcast somewhere, and he said that if he ever sees a lawyer acting in any way, shape, or form, not to like the level this guy's acting, but anything like this, he will fight. He gives them one chance at his firm. If he sees them doing anything like this once, he gives them a warning. They do it again, they're fired. So what's your guys' take? I'll start with Mac on this whole situation, this whole mess.
Yeah, it's a little scary, but it's really sad. I don't know what transpired that got him to this, but there's ways about doing things, and there's, being passionate about representing your client and trying to be zealous and do a good job. But there's lines you don't cross. And, I think some of the emails, he not only crossed those lines, but he blew right through them.
This is a tough business. So
Sure.
I've said some stupid things that I regret. Lawyers on the other side, they test you and they take positions that aren't reasonable. And it's very hard not to lose your stuff. It is. I will say that for a long time, I had a really hard time, but you just have to put the client first. And so Lou, what's your take on this?
I mean, I agree with most of what you guys are saying, to where I certainly get the sentiment from the plaintiff's lawyer in this case, but it's just not worth it. We see absolute bad faith and provocative conduct from far too many defense attorneys, and where they're trying to be bullies, but civility and other tactics are just more effective ways at prying the money out of their clients' hands than trying to be a big than someone who's being.
Sure. Yeah. It just doesn't work. Who knows what was going on with this gentleman, but I think one thing I could say is I would advocate that anybody who's having those tough times get some help.
For
It's
sure.
out there.
Oh, I think you nailed it in the head. Mental health is a real issue. It's not an issue in the legal field. It's an issue in every field.
So back in April, white nationalists perpetrated a multi-victim shooting with an assault rifle at a Chabad synagogue in Poway, California. There's a lawsuit that's been filed where the victims are suing, among others, the synagogue. And they're saying that the synagogue didn't do a good enough job to provide security after being provided like $150,000 of federal funds. And I want to talk less about the story specifically, more about this concept of having a more meritorious claim and having to sue sometimes sympathetic defendants. So we like to wake up, we like to feel good about what we're doing every morning, and it's very hard to go against a place like a synagogue, and I'm Jewish, so it would be particularly tough for me. But how do we approach going after sympathetic defendants, Mac?
Sorry, before I get into that, I think this story hits, an issue that's at the core of this country, along with every other story, that I think we really need some real gun reform. And I think it's crazy as a society. We don't, things aren't moving as fast as they should, and changes aren't being made. And in your backdrop, you have this picture, and I see these two people hugging, and I can only imagine that it's a mom or it's an aunt or someone that just lost someone. And, the thought of going to pray and take advantage of a religious moment and be together, and then an hour later, you've lost someone as a result of something that's totally controllable, is sad. And
when we go up against sympathetic defendants,
Yeah.
like a temple, like a church, it's very tough to do because we just don't want to do it. You don't want to walk into the shopping market and see somebody from the place and say, how could you sue this place? Da, da, da,
Sure.
Right? But we have to put our clients first. And the other point, that when you let something go by, you don't advocate for the victim in a particular situation. all you're doing is perpetrating the same thing that got us there in the first place, which is completely just avoiding the subject. So when you file these lawsuits, the goal is to primarily achieve justice for the client, get them compensated. But a byproduct, and oftentimes even part of the settlement, as you've talked about before, actually includes reform.
The implementation of change, absolutely. A very common thing, and you brought up Arash Wampur, who's an absolute master at wrongful
beast.
Yeah, I mean, he does these wrongful design cases better than anybody. But after he's successful in proving that the city or the county or the state had a defective roadway or design was bad or whatever the certain situation was, he really prides himself on making that change. And
absolutely. Lou, what's your take?
My take is we basically need some way of holding our institutions accountable, especially our most revered ones. These are the sort of places we'll trust with our children. I mean, I have 2 young kids myself, and if I'm going to send them off somewhere for the day, I want to know they're going to be safe and that the place I sent them is going to have security measures in place to protect them from dangers. We don't want to kill the institution. We just want the institution to do its best.
Yeah. Okay. So let's keep it moving. So we got why don't you introduce this one, Lou?
Okay. So sticking with the topic of compensating deserving victims against sympathetic defendants, let's talk about a potential ballot initiative for the 2020 California November ballot called the Fairness for Injured Patients Act. So current California law passed in 1975 called MICRA, the Medical Injury Compensation Reform Act, caps someone's pain and suffering and non-economic damages in a medical malpractice case at $250,000. What the Fairness for Injured Patients Act would do is index that to inflation, which would bring that up to about $1.2 million. And so there are countless examples of where, let's say, a doctor commits medical malpractice against a child who doesn't have much earning potential, is going to mess up the child's life forever based on the harm. And the most the child could get for his or her pain and suffering is $250,000 because of the current law. And similar proposals in the past have failed. And my take on this is that the insurance industry has a lot of influence, because this isn't about protecting doctors or ensuring that they're doctors. This is insurance company profitability.
Absolutely. I'm a huge advocate of the act. There is, one of our esteemed peers in our profession, Nicholas Rowley, who has been pushing this issue for a very long time. And, I follow him on Instagram, and every now and again, he posts a picture of someone who unfortunately is a byproduct of this, dated law and only received $250,000, and that money's gone.
Yep.
But those injuries are still there.
I see a big contradiction here in this conservative philosophy of putting caps on verdicts. It doesn't exactly jive with the free market conservatism of, hey, whatever the jury returns, that's what we're going to give. Why are you artificially placing limits on a jury that you're going to bring a $7 million verdict down to $250,000? It just doesn't seem, it's just extremely contradictory to me. So, okay. So I want to go to a light segment, deal of the week. We all know we've been friends for years. I always use the term deal. We basically want to give an opportunity for everybody to give a non-legal recommendation of the week. So I'm going to give mine. So I've been following this guy, Cliff Weitzman, on social media. He's fascinating. He's this young dude, went to Brown. He somehow is part of informally guiding the Andrew Yang presidential campaign. So I'm trying to get him on LawFlip. So I'm trying to impress him with this, but I really do love his app. So he created this thing called Speechify, and it creates audiobooks from anything. So I read all day, deposition transcripts, cases, motions, all sorts of stuff. And what you could do is you basically highlight the text, put it into this app, and it reads to you, and you can put it in different voices. It's super cool. Go get Speechify. Cliff, come on the show. It's Mac.
My deal of the week is, I think whatever you're doing, wherever you are, who you're with, try to really stay in the moment, detach yourself from technology. I think there's something to be said. Really be in the moment, take advantage of the people that you're with, enjoy their company, and be more present.
Lewis, what's your deal of the week?
Be open to traveling places, even if they don't immediately appeal to you. A lot of the time, our travels are because of work and personal obligations. They're not the places we're picking for fun. And if you have an open mind about where you're going, you can have a great time. I went to a conference in Park City, Utah a couple months ago. It was great. And I'm going to a wedding in a small town called Jalpa in the Mexican state of Zacatecas in a few weeks. I have no idea what I'm getting into, but it sounds exciting to me.
Okay, so it's that time of the month where we have to gear up to do your expenses. How much fun is uploading receipts, guys?
Love.
Okay,
my favorite.
Don't you just love spending hours and hours using expense management software? I don't. Do you guys?
My favorite.
Okay, so because everybody hates doing expenses, get your time back with ROCKPAPR, the revolutionary smart payment system that empowers modern business users to create physical and virtual credit cards with programmatic spend controls. It also automates the entire expense report process for you. That is so sweet. This is the game changer you've been waiting for, and a limited number of LawFlip listeners can join the ROCKPAPR beta. Go to ROCKPAPR, ROCKPAPR.com/LawFlip. That's ROCKPAPR.com/LawFlip. Stop doing expense reports now. Get ROCKPAPR. So we just want to say thank you to everybody who's shown so much love and support. I've heard from people in I really thought that we were just going to hear from people in the law community. I've heard from people in tech, finance, real estate, law, and we've gotten really great feedback. The only thing that I'm going to ask for is a request. If you could share it with your friends, your family, and if you could rate, comment, and as long as you give us a 5 out of 5, I don't care what you write in the comment. You could say Benjy's crazy over and over and over again. We just need the comments. So 5 out of 5, say Benjy's crazy or anything else that's nice. We'll appreciate it. So just like and share and repeat over and over and over again. This was a lot of fun, Mac. I've admired you for a long time, respected you for a long time. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Look, LawFlip, this podcast gets hotter every week. Look at this beautiful smile, okay? Have you seen a beautiful smile like this? I mean, look, Lewis and Mac next to each other. They're
the
gorgeous,
duo right here,
okay?
right?
But let me tell you, this episode is just so hot. I'm so excited about it. And it's just going to keep on getting hotter. We're going to try every week to make it hotter and hotter, but it's going to be hard to compete with this because this is a beautiful man. Look, we're excited to be here. We hope we're giving you value. Check us out next week. It's going to be fire. See you next week.
LawFlip, objection, Your Honor. Turn the game upside down. LawFlip, objection, Your Honor. Turn the game upside down.
Okay, so Arian, they're asking where they could find us. So for LawFlip, it's at LawFlip and LawFlip.com. For Smith & Benowitz, our law firm, which does personal injury employment and class actions, you can find us at Smith Benowitz and SmithBenowitz.com. For the personal stuff, like where you're really going to find the juicy stuff, at Benjy Smith and BenjySmith.com. At Wages Guru and LewisBenowitz.com for Lewis. Oh, so LawFlip is produced, directed, and edited by the young legend Arian Tabibian. Visual effects and compositions by another young legend, Oren Azad. Intro music provided by Pen Practice. Pen Practice, what is it? Premium instrumentals for upcoming artists by the music industry's top producers. For more info, visit penpracticemusic.com. I had so much fun recording the intro song with my man Hilton Deuce Wright. Looking forward to hearing more and more from Pen Practice. So the LawFlip identity, this hot logo that you're looking at, created by Garret, Whisten, and Travis Nagle. Special thank you to Shai and Seth from the Horwitz Marketing Agency. A huge thank you to Aaron and Vanessa from Smith & Benowitz for endlessly dealing with all of our podcast bullshit. And lastly, a huge thank you to our beautiful wives, Julie and Lisa, for supporting our vision, and all the love to all of our 4 boys combined. Disclaimer, this podcast is made available by Smith & Benowitz for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is only intended to provide general information and opinions about legal and other concepts, and is not intended to be used as a source of legal advice or relied on for legal advice. By listening to this podcast, you understand that no attorney-client relationship is being formed between you and Smith & Benowitz or any of its attorneys. This podcast should not be used as a substitute for competent legal advice from a licensed professional attorney in your state.